Stranded passengers have been left angry and frustrated since Comair announced it would suspend all Kulula and British Airways flights with immediate effect. The carrier says it's just too broke to continue flying. It's been under business rescue for some time now, since May 2020, and the Institute of Directors in Southern Africa says the problems at Comair demonstrate a failure in corporate governance. Let's speak to Parmi Natesan from the Institute for Directors in Southern Africa. Thank you very much for speaking to us, ma'am. When I think of what happens with Comair and the fact that it's the second time now, I always think about the passengers that are also stranded, and then other airlines obviously take the capitalist view or the capitalist opportunity to make it more expensive for people to continue their travel. What's your response with regards to that in particular?
Yeah, it's certainly unfortunate. Every organization has a duty towards its stakeholders and needs to take into account the needs, expectations of its stakeholders. And when you're delivering a service like this, there needs to be some sort of assurance that you can then deliver when you're selling tickets, that you'll be able to deliver on what people have purchased.
Mm. And, what do you mean when you say that this demonstrates a failure when it comes to governance itself?
Look, there's different ways to look at this, and I saw a lot of the social media posts were sort of alluding to the fact that perhaps this was an unethical decision to sell lots of tickets the day before the suspension. However, I think that's a very unlikely scenario. In my view, the more likely scenario is the one hand wasn't talking to the other hand. So possibly there were discussions at board level around the financial instability and the possible need to suspend at some point. And at the same time, in the operational side of the business, the sales and marketing teams were proceeding with their activities of putting on a sale to try and make up for lost revenue, which is understandable. And perhaps the message or the communication and coordination from the board through to the CEO and executives through to the rest of the organization could have been better.
It definitely could have, because now people have to now take their time to go back and claim for their monies back, etc. But in terms of Comair being in trouble the second time, this time they say that they don't have money, and they've made the excuse that even fuel prices going up is making it very difficult for them to fly, which is understandable. Even ourselves, with normal cars, we really are drowning in terms of that. But also, they were grounded before in around March this year because of safety concerns. So this is an even bigger problem, I would say.
Yes, certainly. You need to have sympathy as well for what the airlines have gone through in terms of, firstly the pandemic and then what Comair has gone through with the grounding before and now this. At the end of the day, an organization needs to be financially viable and sustainably so. So they need to have the resources to be able to deliver on their obligations and meet the needs of the business over a period of time. And I guess that's the big question here is whether that's even feasible. Because as you say, this is the second time this year that operations have been stopped.
Parmi, looking at what this means, you went back to COVID-19, hard lockdown, etc. That meant that not only the airlines but the entire tourism industry lost out on, revenue during that time. So Comair also saying that they're suspending services for now. That also should be affecting the tourism industry once again, right?
Absolutely. And I guess, there's opportunity now for the other airlines to pick up and deliver more flights and routes and that sort of thing in the interim until Comair gets back on their feet. And I see that they're intending to, be back on their feet quite as soon as they can. I guess from Comair's perspective, the question is how they regain reputation after this now. Because it seems like there's many irate customers out there. Every business, anybody can go start a business, but in order to run a business successfully, you need stakeholders, you need suppliers, customers, employees, and without those, you're unable to be successful. And so we're going to need to see now how they regain trust and reputation with the clients.
And I was actually going to ask you that as my last question in terms of their reputation. A second time in just a few months for all the bad reasons, really. And now you're saying that it looks like there was no communication between what was discussed possibly at board or executive level to the sales team. And now it just looks like they are not a prepared airline. So what would you advise them, in terms of what they can do to regain public trust after all of this?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult question. I think firstly we mustn't be too hard on them. It's easy to sit from outside with hindsight and say there wasn't sufficient communication. We don't know that. It may be the perception that was the case. In terms of reputation management, I'm not a reputation expert, but the board is ultimately responsible for the reputation of the organization, and I'm sure they have plans in place to start rebuilding that and having trust in the brand again.
Well, thank you very much, Parmi. I'm sure this is also going to add to their frustration of being put under business rescue. If you're not trusted, it means you get less customers than usual, and it might mean less money once again. That was Parmi Natesan from the Institute for Directors in Southern Africa, sharing her views of Comair suspending its Kulula and British Airways flights. The carrier says it has no money to continue flying.